A young boy named Gaius Caecilius Secundus is visiting his uncle on the Bay of Naples in late August. In the year 79 A.D., his uncle is a celebrated naval commander and naturalist named Pliny, a man who will later be called Pliny the Elder. The bay is beautiful. The water is blue. The sun is warm on the stone of the villa. Then, on the morning of August 24th, a strange cloud appears above the mountain to the north. The boy watches it rise, shaped, he will later write, like an umbrella pine, with a broad flat top on a long trunk. His uncle is immediately fascinated. He calls for a boat. He wants to go closer. He will not come back. Vesuvius had not erupted in living memory. The mountain that loomed over the Bay of Naples was covered in farms and vineyards and villas, its fertile volcanic soil producing wine that was prized across the Roman Empire. The region at its base, the Campanian Plain, was one of the most densely populated and prosperous in Italy. 4 towns sat in the volcano's shadow. Pompeii, a wealthy commercial city of perhaps 11,000 people. Herculaneum, smaller and more refined. Stabia, and Oplontis. None of them had any reason to fear the mountain above them. Vesuvius was simply the landscape. It was simply home. The warning signs, in retrospect, were everywhere. Earthquakes had shaken the region repeatedly in the years and months before the eruption. Pompeii had suffered significant damage in a major quake in 62 A.D., and tremors had been frequent in the weeks before the final event. The water in some local wells had inexplicably dried up. Animals were behaving strangely. But in a world without geology or seismology, without any scientific framework for understanding what mountains can do, these signs were simply noise. Ordinary life went on. On the morning of August 24th, it stopped. The eruption that began that morning was what modern volcanologists classify as a Plinian eruption, named with an irony that Pliny the Elder could not have anticipated, for the young man watching from the villa on the bay. It was driven by an extraordinary column of superheated gas and ash and rock that blasted upward at many hundreds of miles per hour, rising more than 30 kilometers into the sky before spreading into that distinctive pine tree shape. The energy released in the first hours was many times greater than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The column rained devastation. Pumice chunks of porous, lightweight volcanic rock fell on Pompeii like a hailstone of stone. People sheltered inside their homes. The roofs held for a while. Then they began to collapse under the weight of the accumulating debris. The streets filled so quickly that within hours the single-story buildings were almost buried. People climbed to the upper floors to escape the rising fill. Then the upper floors too began to collapse. The young Pliny, who will later be known as Pliny the Younger, and whose 2 letters describing the eruption are the only first-hand accounts we have, watched from Misenum, across the bay, as the cloud climbed. His uncle had sailed toward the Vesuvian shore to investigate and rescue friends. His mother urged them to flee. He stayed behind with her. What he observed that day he would eventually write down in letters to the historian Tacitus, letters that are among the most extraordinary pieces of scientific and eyewitness writing to survive from the ancient world. He described the darkness. He described the cloud extinguishing the sun so completely that the bay fell into a blackness deeper than the darkest night, a blackness that was not the absence of light, but the presence of something, a thick rolling darkness full of ash and sulfur that filled the lungs and burned the eyes. He described people tying cushions to their heads to protect against the falling pumice. He described his mother urging him to save himself and leave her, an old woman, behind. He refused. He described the sea pulling back, receding from the shore as if drained by some catastrophic force. Those who knew nothing of tsunamis saw it and went down to the exposed shore to collect the fish left flapping on the wet sand. He watched in terror. He knew, with the instinct of someone who had spent his childhood around sailors and naturalists, that the sea would come back. It came back. His uncle, Pliny the Elder, had landed on the beach near Stabia to rescue a friend. The ash was thick. The fire from the mountain was close. The party could not get back to the boats because the wind was against them. They lay down on the beach and waited. In the morning, when the others rose to flee, Pliny the Elder could not rise. He had suffered, probably, a heart attack, possibly accelerated by the sulfurous air. He was found dead on the beach 2 days later, his body intact and reportedly peaceful-looking, covered in ash. He had gone toward the volcano while everyone else fled. It was very much in his nature. In Pompeii, the final phase began approximately 18 hours into the eruption. The eruption column collapsed. When the enormous pillar of gas and rock that had been blasting upward could no longer sustain itself, it fell back down the mountain in a series of pyroclastic surges and flows, avalanches of superheated gas and ash and rock traveling at hundreds of miles per hour at temperatures of several hundred degrees Celsius. There is no outrunning a pyroclastic surge. There is no hiding from it. It moves faster than a car on a highway and kills everything in its path within seconds. The people of Pompeii who had survived the night died in those final surges. They died where they were, in the streets, in their homes, in the Villa of the Mysteries, in the Forum, in the brothels, in the baths. Their bodies were buried under meters of volcanic ash and pumice, which eventually hardened around them. In the centuries that followed, the organic matter of the bodies decayed, leaving hollow cavities in the rock, in the exact shape of the people, their positions, their expressions, the folds of their clothing, the terror or the resignation on their faces, preserved in negative space. When archaeologists discovered this in the 19th century, they began pouring liquid plaster into the cavities. The casts that emerged are among the most haunting objects in the world. A man covering his face with his hands, a dog curled in on itself, a family huddled together, the children pressed against their parents, a woman who has turned her face to the ground. Every cast is a specific person, in a specific moment, in the last seconds of a specific life. We don't know their names. We never will, but we know their shapes. Pompeii and Herculaneum were so completely buried that within a generation they were essentially forgotten. The towns were gone. The landscape above them changed. The names persisted in Roman records, but the locations were vague, the details hazy. Centuries passed. Medieval maps show the region without them. They were rediscovered in the 18th century. First Herculaneum in 1738 and Pompeii in 1748, when workmen digging in the region began to find walls, mosaics, inscriptions, objects. The Bourbon kings of Naples, recognizing the value of what was being uncovered, funded excavations. What emerged, slowly and incompletely, was something the world had never seen before. A city frozen in a single moment, preserved in extraordinary detail, offering a window into Roman daily life that no library and no text could match. The bakeries still had bread in the ovens. The wine jars were still on the shelves. The election notices were still painted on the walls. The graffiti was still there. Insults and boasts and declarations of love scratched into plaster. The small private noise of ordinary life made permanent by disaster. We know the names of gladiators who fought in the amphitheater. We know the prices of goods in the market. We know the jokes people told. We know what they dreamed about, from the paintings on their bedroom walls. We know the shape of their furniture, and the sound of their fountains, and the arrangement of their gardens. Vesuvius buried Pompeii. In doing so, it preserved it. The destruction became the preservation. The catastrophe became the archive. A boy watches a cloud shaped like an umbrella pine rising above a mountain. He is frightened. He is curious. He is a very good observer. He will grow up to be one of the great letter writers of the Roman world. And the only reason we know anything about what happened that day, with anything approaching first-hand authority, is because he was there, and he remembered, and he wrote it down. He watches the cloud. He writes. He does not go toward the mountain. He survives.